In the last 7 days, we have made $38,050. Now, in this video, I'm going to show you specifically how we made that money. So hopefully you can get that money as well. And no, it didn't come from my mailbox. We actually had to work for it. So how do we make this sort of money? Well, we made this money with wholesaling real estate. And specifically, I'm going to break down for you. Let me get some sun here in my face. I'm going to break down for you specifically the deals that we did, where these deals came from, and how we found the buyers, and a lot of other nitty-gritty details, in the hopes that you would be inspired, in the hopes that you would get some tips, and maybe you might just get out of your own way and realize that there's a lot of money to be made out there, no matter what everybody else says. And it's your time to do it, because this is your sign to go all in. Or maybe the last video I did was, this is your second sign to go all in. Now, these sellers, now what we're doing is wholesaling real estate. So just to be clear, we are not closing on any of these properties. We are running Facebook and TikTok campaigns predominantly, and then we are now getting sellers, motivated property owners all throughout the country that are filling out the form, submitting their information and saying, yes, I am interested in selling my property at a discount. And then we are now talking with these wonderful people and seeing what we could do to help them. Now, let's talk about the 3 deals. Number one, we had a seller in Fort Lauderdale, excuse me, in Jacksonville, Florida. And I'm just looking at my notes here on my phone. We had a seller in Jacksonville, Florida, that they were a total of 5 people that inherited their property, and they didn't want to keep it. All the properties were in kind of the rough part of town, and they needed a ton of work. They were just dilapidated, so they reached out in order for us to be able to purchase a property. Now, this was with one of our partners. As you may or may not know, we most of our deals are done with our partners, meaning that we help people get started with their ads. We set them up for them, and then we help them analyze the deals, and then we help them find buyers. So that all of our deals right now are pending and or closing are with our investor partners. The lighting is pretty bad here. Hopefully you can muster enough strength to listen to my video despite the bad lighting. Now, an error that was made on this deal is that there's 3 properties, and so our partner put the 3 properties all on one contract. So if you have a seller that has multiple properties, you'd want to get them segregated into their own individual contracts and price them out individually, because that is always messy when you're trying to sell them all at one time, because then you have to find a buyer that wants them all, and so that's always challenging. And then you're gonna have to backtrack and get the contracts re-signed. And then what if the seller decides to change their mind when you're trying to get that contract re-signed, because you need a separate contract for each individual property? That's always the easier way. Now, yes, could you sell them all together? You could, but it's just always tough to find one buyer that wants all of the properties. Now, on this particular deal, we made, there were 3 properties. 2 of them we were able to sell. The other one is still lingering. The other one we're still trying to find a buyer for, or trying to get it done. First one, we made $8,300. The transaction, we actually worked with another wholesaler who ended up finding the buyer. So we do work with other wholesalers. And however, we found that other wholesaler, they found us through our listing on InvestorLift. So we use InvestorLift, and that's our primary tool for finding buyers for our properties. It's like the Rolls-Royce, Mercedes-Benz right now of buyers, or finding nationwide buyers. And so that's what we use in order to find a buyer. And then the second deal in that mix was one that we made $8,750 for that other deal. Now, in that deal, there were 2 wholesalers involved. So it was a daisy chain. A daisy chain is when we have the contract, we assign it to somebody, and then they assign it to somebody else. Now, typically we don't like to do those, but these properties were real, like, they were real dogs. So, you know, we you know, in that scenario, if you got nothing, then you're like, okay, let's do it. So we said yes, because we had no other options. But, you know, they found buyers. Actually, we were getting some offers, but they were not, you know, that were not that great. And these guys, they were able to find a buyer that, I don't know why they paid so much, but they did. They got the buyer, and they ended up making money on top of whatever we made. So that is deal number 2 in that package. So, and again, deal number 3, we're still waiting on, and I believe that those came from Facebook, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. By the way, I'm walking down the street, always doing this, just getting some exercise and walking down the street of my neighborhood. There's a house here down the street that sold for 9.3 million. Lovely house. It looks like an office building. Check this out here. I don't know if you can see it. Maybe I might zoom in when we post editing, but that's what you want. I always say that what you want is when you invite people to your house, they say, I got to get out of this bad lighting here. Who gives a shit? They say, oh, Chico, I couldn't find your house. Why? What do you mean? There was an office building. And you say, that's my house, the one that looks like an office building. All right, let's talk about deal number 3, I guess, because that was 2 deals that closed. The other deal was one that we made $21,000 in North Carolina. Again, this was a partner deal. This one was at 1511 East Lane Street. I don't have the other addresses handy. Now, this was an interesting situation because the seller, this one came from a Facebook ad. This one came from one of our partners. And on this particular situation, the seller had recently purchased the property, and they were intending to rehab it. But then the challenge was that they figured out that they realized that it was going to be too much work in order to get the property fixed up. And so then the property, really what needed to happen was the property needed to be demolished and then torn down so that a brand new structure would be built. Because in this particular neighborhood, what they have is they have a lot of properties that are just completely new builds. So it's a kind of an area where they're tearing down the old houses and building out the new houses. And so that's what this particular property was. And it was just too much work for him. So he decided that he wanted to sell it. He filled out the form, and we chatted with him. We got on the contract. I was the one that did the comp for this one. We have daily office hour calls with our partners, and so I was the one on this particular call that I looked at the deal and I said, hey, I think this might be a deal. Check out that house behind me. I think that this might be a deal. This might be a deal because there's a lot of new builds, and I think that somebody would tear this house down and build it. Now, this one had a slight issue on title. We thought that we didn't know if it was going to be a problem or not. There was an easement or some sort of encroachment, but they were able to handle it, and then we were able to close, and that was for $21,000 that we made on that campaign. The buyer was also found through Investor Lift. So on this particular one, the buyer, the person that reached out to us, was a real estate agent that reached out to us because she spotted the property on Investor Lift. She ended up making $2,000, and so I was asking, well, why is she making so little? I think it's because she is working with this particular buyer all the time, and so she ends up getting the listing once they build the new properties, and now she will get that money as a listing agent. So for her, you know, getting that property into her client's hand was great because now she's able to make money on the back end on that particular property. And this is the campaign that the client is running on Facebook. They're targeting about 15 or 17 states using Facebook ads, using lead forms, and I think maybe I mentioned it. They're paying about $25 a lead. $25 a lead they're paying for these leads. And again, this is a really populated area. Now, when we're running ads, of course, we get campaigns that are, we get leads that are in the middle of nowhere. You know, you can't avoid it. And it becomes a numbers game. You know, I had a conversation with one of our partners the other day, and I said to them, look, you don't got to make every lead a deal. It's just not going to happen. Your objective is you get enough leads coming through the door, and you're sifting and sorting. And if all you did was 30 leads come in, you're paying 25 bucks a lead, you know, one of those turned into a deal, then you're just going to repeat that process over and over again because you're going to make a lot of money. And so those are the deals we're doing. We had a great week. Most importantly, we made money, but the partners made money. Okay, meaning that, you know, this was the first deal, I think, for this particular partner, and this was probably the maybe the 5th deal that we have done with the other partner with the properties in Jacksonville. And you know, the final thing I want to make sure that you guys understand is this. Look, no matter what the economic circumstances are, there's always people in the market that must sell. They don't give a crap about what the market is, about interest rates or nothing. They gotta offload. Inherited, we get a lot of inherited properties. The other one where the property owner you know, didn't want to do the rehabs, on that particular property it's the same thing. He did not want to deal with it. He needed to get it off his hands because he needed to take that money and do something else with it. On the flip side, there's also people that are also buying as well. So they're out there and they need inventory because they have construction crews, they have all sorts of things happening, and they need to keep the wheels in their business moving, and so they need to buy properties. And so I want to just encourage you that there's money to be made out there. You know, a lot of people complain about or ask about, oh gee, what about, you know, the wholesaling regulations and this and that. And listen, don't worry about that stuff. There's workarounds for everything. Worry about finding leads and making money now, and the hell with everything else. And by the way, you should check out this other video here. I think it's really important because mindset is a big thing, and I think that video is going to help you tremendously.